This week, we're excited to welcome Caron of Studio Laloc.
Lauren shares her journey from visual merchandising to interior design and the culture shock of moving from the commercial world to residential.
We love Lauren's perspective on leveling up to fewer but larger client projects.
And how she's finding balance between taking projects for media exposure, creativity, or money.
Let's go! Hi, I'm Rebecca of Studio Plum.
And I'm Shaun of Renstead Interiors. We're interior designers
Turned internet friends.
Turned real life friends.
Welcome to the Hot Young Designers Club podcast.
We're not that hot.
Or that young.
Every week, we'll be spilling the tea on how a new generation of interior designers can run their businesses.
Welcome to the club. Hey, Shaun.
What's up, Rebecca?
Oh, the clouds have cleared on our society.
That and literally here, it rained over the weekend and it was like, the Lord is telling us to wipe everything clean.
We don't
Bless
need to
this
have a
mess.
Yeah. It was an optimistic weekend for sure.
I'm feeling it.
Kind of segueing into Fizzle Sizzle, I don't know if you felt this, but I actually felt worse. So Saturday, it was announced that Biden won the election.
Mm-hmm.
And just to tell our audience where we are in the timeline of the world.
Yes.
And I don't know, I felt like a lot of, I got a lot more kind of feedback from followers on Instagram. I don't get crazy political on my Instagram, but I do, post some things, and I don't know, some people were disappointed, and I just saw that a lot, with a lot of different other designers, after months and months of some people are very political and clear, and it's their company, they should be able to write whatever they want, but it seems like a lot more people were
stick to design.
And unfollow, I guess a lot of people lost followers, which I just think is interesting. Now you're unfollowing. I don't get that.
Yeah, I feel like it's this attract and repel. Attract who you really want to have following you anyway, and then repel the people you don't. And I mean, I don't know. I'm
just curious why people that was the final straw. I don't know.
Would they have ever been your clients though?
I mean, maybe. I don't know. I'm not really talking about me personally, losing tons of followers, because I didn't, but it just seemed...
the energy out there, the atmosphere. Yeah.
And then that combined with, I'm going to say in air quotes, wrapping up our one-room challenge.
Is it ever really over?
Oh my God. So we're at the place where the entire dining room and all of its furniture is now in the living room, which means we have a piano and dining table, chairs stacked everywhere.
Yes.
All of the lamps I've been collecting, which I'll get
is
to.
A lot.
It's quite a few, about 500 books. It's legit looks like we live in a thrift store.
I think that's the phase where in my household I start to feel hated, because there's no zone that is safe anymore. Every free corner, every spot to store a box of something has been put out of the room I'm working on, and that's when I think it hits peak frustration in my household. Is just
At least our bedrooms got finished. Well, yours is actually taken over by your office.
Yeah, since I'm doing my office, I'm in the bedroom, and I've really massively outgrown the desk during the course of this one room challenge that I technically began back in August.
That's true. You've been doing it for a long time.
It started a while ago with a lot of setbacks, and so I'm really ready to like fully unload into the new office space and be able to work effectively and like leave a mess that doesn't frustrate my family. Like Shaun is really annoyed. The
Over
dogs
it.
are visually, the dogs are actually, I feel poorly about the dogs because they're really disrupted by like their beds have to keep moving because something has to go in a spot somewhere, or they get moved around even more, and they're like so disrupted, like wandering around, getting lost, especially Eames because he's like blind and deaf. So
Eames like goes to his normal spot and it's not there.
there's no
God
bed.
damn it.
Yeah, god damn it, not
He
this shit
bumps his head
again.
on another box and turns around. Now what?
Yeah,
Can somebody
like
tell me
there's
where my bed is?
somebody, please, anybody. It's really like it gets annoying, but
Oh.
we're getting close. You are having good things going on in your room though.
Yeah, like my room is like a the biggest project is this like big wall of bookshelves we've been working on, and the rest is just the same furniture we already had. So I don't have to do a ton of like styling or finding of things, except I decided I wanted a pair of lamps to go on the buffet. And originally in this process, I have like tons of single lamps. All you single lamps.
All the single lamps, all the single lamps, which
So,
are everywhere. Every
put your
store, you
plugs
can always
up.
find one.
Oh.
Put your plugs up. No. Mom, not in front of my friends.
Put your harps up. Oh. I might cut that. Okay.
Mom joke alert.
Um so so I decided I wanted, once I got the art figured out, I decided I wanted two. And I'd already worked with my lighting partner, so I didn't want to go back. And I also wanted something I wanted something vintage and kind of quirky. Anyway, I've been looking for the last couple weeks every day for these perfect lamps and haven't been able to find it. But yesterday, my friend Vince, he thrift shops for fun, and he's like, "Tell me what you're looking for. I'm going thrifting today." So I gave him his assignment, and he came through.
Like thrift concierge.
He was totally my thrift concierge. He was my thrift doula. And he got me two pairs of lamps. One I just had him grab because it was like, you can't come back.
Yeah, once you left and then someone bought them, it's the regrets of a lifetime type of experience.
Yeah, and it was like way on the other side of town. I wasn't gonna go. So anyway, then the second stop, he found like the perfect lamp, $8. I'm very happy. So
You can't beat that price.
you really can't. Now I'm gonna spend $200 on shades, but whatever.
Okay. Good shades are an investment. And also, I feel like when you add more factors to like scale, color, fabric, shape, all of that, they get really pricey very quick. And
They're not gonna
but
be
that's
that great. They're probably not gonna be 200. They'll probably be like $50 each, which definitely outnumbers the cost of the lamp themselves. But
but we do that with art too. Like the art can be less expensive than all of the work that goes into framing and matting them.
totally,
But it elevates, like they're gonna look
it's like that
fantastic in the
high low. Yeah,
space. And the shade most really well proportioned shades could be used other places
like I
if
can reuse
ever.
the shade. Yeah,
Yeah, like if it's the right, I don't know, not I don't mean like golden ratio, but I think you know what I mean, where it's like the right scale and dimensions tend to
formula.
repeat. Yeah, like they tend to repeat
Mm-hmm.
in design a lot. So I feel pretty confident that you could find another lamp one day that would match that shade if the lamp didn't work anymore, or vice versa. Like,
It's really hard to find lamps shades that fit. Like this one behind me. It's way too small.
Yeah.
But I think what I think I'm gonna do is like I have to get something local that's in stock because I'm out of time, but I think I might look at smaller harps too, so I can lower.
Oh, that
Which I
helps.
never
Yeah.
really thought about doing that. So anyway,
Very smart. I like it.
yeah. How about you?
Fizzle, I mentioned that LA was having a like rain windstorm, which was actually kind of lovely until we lost like half of one of our olive trees, like a huge main trunk branch combo, all the way down to the
Oh,
root, split and pulled off of the tree yesterday. It was like at sunset. We were taking our trash cans out to the street because they get picked up today. Pulled it out there, and I'm like, God damn it! Like just like that is not what I want to see right now. Not cool. Um, it's not the end of the world. It's just,
no, but it's like time. It's money because they're expensive trees, but also time. Like you have to wait a long time to get
yeah.
a tree like kind of mature.
Yeah. So our arborist is gonna come out and look at them because you can imagine how busy he's been since yesterday and all the windstorms. So he'll be out to look at it. But we're already looking at it where now the tree is so unbalanced that it may not be possible that the tree can be saved, that it may be so weak and unbalanced that it's now an unsafe tree to leave anyway. It didn't hit the house, it didn't hit a car, it didn't hit people. That's the good part. The other good part is we planted them when we did a big landscape project when we moved in 3 years ago. So they've only been really there for about 2 years. So it's not like it's a 20-year-old olive
Yeah.
tree at this point that I'm looking at having to deal with, but potentially we will be having to replace that
Well, hopefully
tree.
he thinks it can be saved.
Yeah, and if he
Just might be
says, you know what,
weird for a while.
yeah, if he says, okay, it's gonna be weird for a little while, but it'll be fine, maybe. If he says, look, in the time and energy that you could spend making this one work, you could get another really great specimen and you're going to be happier in the long run, then I'm going to listen to his guidance on that.
Yeah.
So I don't want it to be a weak tree that we kind of like hobble along. We're
Or
only a
just
few
like
years
sticks
in.
in the ground for.
Ugh, barf. No. Like I would rather just know like, okay, what should I do instead? Just give it
Yeah.
like rip the band-aid off, give me the rough news. It's just a tree though. Like I can't get
It's
too
right.
devastated. It's not a person, it's not my house. It's
Yeah, it's
okay.
not like you had a 100-foot
It
oak fall on your roof and roll down the side of your back patio and
totally
destroy your
relatable.
backyard.
Relatable content alert. So I'm feeling okay about that, if not disappointed. But you know, it's a windstorm. It's not like somebody accidentally did it, so I can't really be
Well,
mad at
maybe
it
it's a
either.
metaphor. Sometimes things happen to us in our lives that seem very devastating, but you just gotta wipe the slate clean, plant something new, and
Oh,
start a new growth. Not that sounds
oh,
gross, but
election metaphor time. The more you know. I like that.
yeah, well,
On the upside of that, speaking of like planting the seeds and like watching things grow, I was working out project timelines because we're heading into the end of the year. I legit have projects into that, like when you plan out the timelines of construction and all of that, we're into the summer of next year already. Like, what?
pool party.
Hot young pool party.
God,
Um,
wow, that feels so
Hooked.
crazy.
Like, I
But
have a
I get
sense of
it.
relief of like, oh, that's work. Like, I have planned
Hmm.
work and time that will be paying me into the summer of next year and hopefully beyond, because some of these it's like staged processes. Like
Hmm.
I don't want to like count
You're
all the
not counting
chickens
any
before they
little
hatch.
chickies. Yeah.
Yeah, but there are some let's get through some phases of these, because not my clients are real people with real budgets, and not doing full home teardowns and stuff that are like 2 and 3 year projects. Most of them within a year we're able to finish. So I feel good that we're heading into that stage of project now. Like, that makes me feel good.
You
I feel
should. That's
I
awesome.
feel less anxiety about where the next call comes in. Like, it's okay. I have stuff that is going to
Like
be into the summer and then the fall of next year already.
like something's happening.
Yeah, but it's a long game, and that's hard, um, to like keep yourself focused on that far out.
Yeah, that's not happening for me. I mean,
I want to focus on the now too. Like, I don't
yeah.
want to get so focused on like, oh, that'll be great in November of next year. I want to stick in the now so I can
Right.
enjoy it.
Yeah, and also, keep the ball moving because like you said, you never know. Circumstances change, and you just always have to be out there,
Yeah.
being out there.
Yes. Keep myself available, keep myself in front of people. I'm here for that. Um, so I'm feeling that's a good energy to take into this kind of rollout of the end of the year. Is like, well, it has been a shit show. It's been a pretty complete shit show, but it has some highlights in the shit
Hmm.
show also.
Hmm. No, I I weirdly, I don't know. I weirdly have appreciated a lot, like in terms of pandemic life. Obviously, people being sick and scared, and kids not going to school, like people that are losing their jobs. That's not a blessing at all.
Right.
But I do just appreciate the slowdown and, like, I don't know, kind of the excuse to be closer to home, not running around willy nilly. I don't know, like anytime we go out, it just feels more conscious and
Like
purposeful.
purposeful. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm not going full slow living. I can't do that. Like, I appreciate the people
No,
who
you're not
can live that way.
homesteading.
No, but I can appreciate people who like that. And I can appreciate having some of that in my own life where I feel like I'm making conscious decisions because I need to. And if I were in the like instant world we usually live in, I wouldn't always stop to think about those things.
Right. I think the default is being home and settled versus before it was there's a hole in my schedule. I need to fill it.
Yeah. And what could I
So
do with this time? Or where could I go?
yeah, so like I don't know, it used to feel wasteful, I think, to be home this much, but now it's like, wait, this is actually how we're supposed to be. I always think like back to when I was a kid or
When
teenage,
you
even in
were
college,
when I
we
was in
didn't
school.
we didn't have cell phones, and I always think like, how did that work? Like I lived through it. Went through college without cell phones. But I think we were just home more because we were. And the default wasn't like always running around. I think the cell phones are what allow us to never be home,
It's, yeah, constant access. I don't need to be home for that phone call. I don't need to be home to check an email.
to make
I
plans. Like someone,
Right.
like you can be out and about and someone's like, want to
Hmm.
grab a drink, and you just turn right instead of left. Like,
Right. And then you can get a hold of your spouse, even if they're not at
right.
their desk at work. You can get a hold of them and be like, hey, I'm going to be 30 minutes behind. I'm going to stop and have a drink with a coworker before I come home. And you don't feel
Yeah.
bad
So like
about
we were
that.
just really untethered, I think, because of that. But now I think it's like kind of switched back. And I think it's more healthy for us. So
All right. So the
as
plums
long as we're all healthy.
living the slow life into
I made one, but
2022.
I only made one loaf of bread in
And I didn't make
2020.
any. So kudos. Like, no, I do not. No, no. I'm not much of a baker. I don't have
I'm not
time
either.
anymore.
It's actually pretty easy.
No, I know. I used to make macarons.
Those aren't easy.
Oh, no, they're not. That is like four to
Macarons,
six
not
hours.
macaroons, right?
Not macarons, macarons, the French
Yeah.
little like
Oh, hell no. That's
it's
way
oh,
too exact.
they take it is a science experiment and it takes
Yeah.
if you want to make more than one color or more than one filling, 4 to 6 hours,
And they're
period.
like tiny souffles. Like they'll just, you can
Yes.
really make them terrible.
Like the next time someone goes, "Oh my God, why are they $3 at Whole Foods?" Then you need to realize all of the work that goes into making one little delicacy. Why do you think they're like a sign of the aristocracy? Like
Right.
they're so time consuming to make that unless you could have paid a professional pastry chef to make them, that's a whole day's worth of prep and baking and everything that goes into it. I know people who make the almond flour that goes into them
What?
from scratch. Like they make their own almond flour. I'm like, who the hell has time for this? But they
I don't
will.
even like them that much. Yeah.
Like that's what I'm saying. Anyway, I'm not a baker for that. I just don't have the
This
energy for
this
that
week's
anymore.
bakery chat. Let's
Get into
let's
our
head into
episode?
our epi. Yeah.
Yeah, let's do it. Um our guest today is Lauren Caron. She's the owner and the principal designer of Studio Laloc, and Lauren has a fascinating start to her career in New York City, working in luxury retail and designing displays for companies like Tiffany and Bergdorf Goodman. And after a decade in visual presentation and a move to Seattle, Lauren set off on her own to build a residential design firm.
We really love talking to her. We're Instagram friends. It was really fun to get together and have a little chit chat.
Totes. Welcome, Lauren.
Thank you
Hi,
for having
Lauren.
me.
We're so excited to see your face and not just be typing in DMs.
I know. I'm a little nervous that I get to see you guys doing this. So
Oh,
Oh,
I'm
don't
literally
be.
wearing a house coat, so don't be nervous.
I put lipstick on today because it's
I
the
kind of
first
did.
conversation I can have with like lipstick and not a mask.
And
So
face to face. I know, but sometimes
Seriously.
I don't mind mask life because it makes me less self-conscious of like, oh, I didn't trim my beard today. And then I'm living in mask life. So I'm like, oh, they can only see a little bit by my ears. No big deal. Who cares? Like,
It's true. You can be under
yeah,
disguise.
there's days when I'm like, do I have stuff in my teeth? Oh, it really doesn't matter because I have a
nobody
mask on.
nobody cares. Well, we will care for ourselves if it's like that because it bothers you or you look in the mirror later. But
Yeah.
new mask life, especially for site visits and stuff like that.
So let's just kind of kick into your interior design journey. Can you tell us a little bit about like your background and how you got into this business?
Yeah. So I started out in visual merchandising or retail
Hmm.
store design. And I originally was studying illustration and then fell in love with that as like a opportunity to do art and to make money. So I moved to New York and I went to FIT, which was a visual presentation and exhibition design program. And I started working at Tiffany's when I was still in school, and then I finished and was working there full time for about 4 years, and I was on the creative visual merchandising team, and I would design basically anything that the jewelry sat on. So it was not necessarily like the fixtures, the big display fixtures, but it was anything that like you would put jewelry on in terms of like the neck forms or like the ring forms or anything like that.
Hmm.
And
Cool.
then we would do some window displays. Like I would do some of the smaller, more like personal window displays, not all of the rollouts. But there was a couple towards the end where I did some of the larger rollouts, and I wanted to work at Bergdorf's. That was like the real reason why I moved to New York. So
Oh my gosh,
yeah. So my director at the time, he had given me, I think I've already talked about this, but he gave me like an informational interview with somebody at Bergdorf's, and I went to that, and I was very unexpected because they were actually hiring. So they pushed me on to someone who is the director of all non-ready-to-wear, and she covered decorative home and beauty and jewelry and like men's store. And so I worked with her, and I covered decorative home, beauty, and then the main floor after she left. So I was at Bergdorf's for about 3 years, and I loved the job, but I really wanted to work in like store design. I really wanted to work with people on a personal level and not just like design displays for like Saudi princesses and everything. So
Right.
I wanted more of like that personal connection. So I decided that I was going to start my own design firm, and I decided to leave Bergdorf's. And initially it was like 2 parts. One part of it was still store design, retail, and displays. And I was working with different stores while I was doing that. And then another part of it was residential interior design. And that's how I started. I was there. I did that for about a year. And then my husband got a job in Seattle, and we moved out to Seattle. So, and I originally, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Did you just like teach yourself the residential interior part?
Well, in college, we studied a lot of interior design programs. Like we had drafting, we learned all the rendering programs. We had AutoCAD, and I also took like a business major in addition to the major that I had before. And in that business major, it was like it was a museum management major. So we studied business, but also like art history, and I focused on architecture and interior design. And I had already like met all my creative electives. So I tried to like create my own interior design program. And I don't know, that's the best way I could explain it. Yeah. And so when I was working, we were doing a lot of very similar like working style, I would say, to interior design. But the residential part, I basically had to like teach myself how to work with clients. And I don't know, it was kind of easy to go into it because I was always like at Tiffany's, my role was pulling all the fabrics and going to all the showrooms and working with all those vendors and really like had relationships. So even when I transferred over to Bergdorf's, I still had those relationships. And then I was able to like keep them through residential design. But I would say the biggest learning curve was whenever you're doing like corporate design for corporate, you have like so many levels of approval and so many different people that you have to prove your design is good enough for. But when you work with clients, like they're coming to you as the expert. And so if you're like, I think we should do this, usually they're like, oh, that's great. I like that idea. And I remember at first I was very confused.
Like,
or not
really?
confused, but I was like, you do? You don't need me to give you like every design. Yeah. So that was like a big kind of learning curve, because it was like my confidence had almost been like battered down by working in corporate for so long. I always had to come in with like 3 different backup plans to like say like, oh, this is either like this design is the right design, or if this design's not the right design, here's the other designs that I can present you with like immediately.
A whole business case every time you show up to present, like
exactly.
Well, and there's politics involved and people's egos and weird stuff.
Yeah. So that was, I would say, like the greatest kind of like initial learning curve. And then a lot of the other stuff, like figuring out markups, figuring out what to bill people. God, there was just so much. I remember just like trying to figure it out as I went, and just asking like other friends that were also designers that I was working with at the time. And do you guys know about home polish? Did you ever do any home polish work?
I never did it.
I didn't, but I'm very familiar with other designers in LA who had that all go down.
Yeah, so I actually was a home polish designer early on too.
Oh, no
so
kidding.
In the first year, I had a hotel that I was working on. I had Bergdorf's was renovating their main floor. I had a tattoo shop in Richmond, Virginia, and I was doing a jewelry store in Alabama. And then I had home polish. So I was taking on home polish projects, and it was really just to kind of like get my feet wet with residential design. And I think that like first year I had like 16 or 17 home polish clients. at a time, and it was
Oh
just
my God.
insane. Yeah.
No.
And it was,
I
you know, it was New
can't.
York, so like there was a gamut of different clients and everything, but
Sure.
I was killing myself that first year, I would say. And then when we moved, I was still going back and forth for the first 6 months because I still had contracts. Like the hotel didn't finish out until the end of 2016, and Bergdorf's didn't finish until like December of 2016. So that was almost a year that I had to go back and forth very
Oh my
consistently.
gosh.
And I started taking clients in Seattle through Home Polish because I didn't know anybody in Seattle.
Yeah.
And that was fine, but like my goal ultimately was to like have the least amount of clients and to make the most amount of money from them.
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds awful, but you
Goals.
know, like larger
No, it's not.
projects. So I was tired of doing like a room here or another room there, or like the add-on services that Home Polish did. And
Yeah.
a lot of those clients that came through like didn't come, they were, the way like Home Polish would work is it was like a dating service, so they would kind of like join you up based on like styles and aesthetic, but nobody was really like working with you because it was your own personal style. So
Right.
so
It's
that
like a
was my other
swipe
goal.
left, swipe right type of
Totally.
behavior. Like, oh, this'll do. Sure, why not? And you don't
Yeah.
really know who's landing with the right personality or the right project. There's none of that vetting going on.
Well, and I love hearing that your background. I didn't know all that because that totally makes sense in your work. Like you are so like detailed and like I have a background in corporate marketing departments and like product kind of marketing. So like you have to like be so minute and meticulous and you're looking at the smallest of things when you're especially diamonds or like fine
Yeah.
jewelry, like it's so tiny. So I can see like you're working at that consideration of every detail level, which I really love in your work.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, that's really when I was doing jewelry, we focused on like everything. We did a lot of like any of the fabrics within the cases, you know, how is like the velvet going, like every single little detail really mattered. And being really like strong with your design point of view or like your message really mattered too. But like then you could kind of fill in with all the details, and every little detail kind of tells that story.
Totally.
I would say another thing, like with the Bergdorfs, they didn't allow logos in the store at the time. And I don't know, I think they've started shifting, but a big thing with doing any type of presentation or design for displays for different brands is that you really had to tell that story through like materials and finishes and texture, and nothing
Ooh.
about like the actual logo. So if you're designing an installation for Chanel, you're really thinking about the different like the what are the common trademarks or like pillars of the brand aesthetic. And obviously like the color, the ivory and black is always in the logo and or their packaging, and then they also, you know, the tweed and everything like
That suiting fabric is like
Mm-hmm.
everybody does it now, but they did it first and best type of idea. Like,
yeah.
So yeah, it's like an extension of the fashion design itself. That's cool. I love
Yeah,
that.
so that was a lot of, and I also worked a lot with like floral designers and everything for displays, so that kind of explains why I really like floral arranging.
you made a
But
whole space in your house to have more room to do it.
I did.
I feel like listeners might recognize it, even if they didn't recognize that it's yours yet. If they are looking at that pink scullery, like you
Oh,
like
yeah.
broke the internet with that.
Well, thank you. That was going pink was the right move there. So
It's the perfect like moody blush. Yeah.
I know. I love that room. I spend a lot of time in there. So when you were talking about like kitchens, I was thinking, man, what about scullery? Why aren't you guys throwing that in the mix when like your favorite things to add to a kitchen?
What's the difference between a scullery and a
like
butler's
a prep
pantry?
kitchen or a butler's pantry?
Yeah, it basically is. I mean, you didn't throw the word out. I was waiting for it. But the second kitchen that for like doing dishes or the kind of back of house work, that's a scullery basically. So, and then the butler's pantry, I think, is like kind of like the it's in between the kitchen and the dining
dining.
room, and
Yeah.
it's really like setting, like getting the food ready before it goes to the guest and that kind of
Got it.
Right.
It's
Or
not
bringing
prep.
things
It's
out, setting them down before they go to the kitchen.
right. Yeah, we did a butler pantry in a New York project that is really beautiful. But yeah.
Do you feel that different or the difference with the architecture from the East Coast and West Coast?
Oh, 100%.
I mean, like that's like my naivete. Like I grew up in Orange County, like track house develop. Like we do not have.
There's not a lot of
any that.
architectural detail. I mean, there are the neighborhoods for it, but it's usually like the older historic neighborhoods.
But they're like maybe from the 20s.
Yeah.
Like, that's an
or
old
even if you look
neighborhood.
at like San Francisco, where you're like, oh, Victorian era, like, yeah, okay, that's old, but they lost a big part of the city
Yeah, they
through
did.
fire and earthquake. So
Yeah.
it's like this weird identity that we don't see as much. But I know that you're finding that in Seattle.
I am. I mean, I think Seattle has a lot of the same things. Like if you look kind of through their history, there was several fires, there were earthquakes, there was like the Denny regrade, which is when they changed the like basically the landscape of going from Capitol Hill down to downtown, and they
Mhm.
just tore out a ton of old like architecture and clapboard buildings that were from, I would say, like turn of the century or late 1800s. And I think now, like what we see in Seattle is a lot of the revival versions of colonials or
Yeah.
Georgian houses, and they are 1920s to 1940s and some like 1950s homes. So they've been made to look like some of these more like classic colonial architecture and everything that you see in New England. And that's like a breath of fresh air for me. I don't know. I'm such an East Coaster at heart. I grew up in a small town in Connecticut, and like that town, we only have one running stoplight, and we don't have a gas station still. So
No?
yeah,
Whoa.
it's like more cows than people. It's like a dairy town. And my house was 1801 that I grew up in, and I just have always been around like kind of older homes for most of my life. And then living in New York, there's such nice like old architecture, and even every apartment that we lived in was either, I think we lived in an Italianate building, which was 1850s, I think, and then, or more like 1870s. And then we have like our apartment in Brooklyn is a pre-war, so I think it was like 1920. And yeah, so like the architecture is really different. It was hard for me at first, I think, because if you're like so used to where you grow up, and then you kind of have to get used to designing for different types of architecture, can kind of give you a little bit of a head flip. And then in New York, like most of my work, you would design within that space, and you didn't have to consider the other architecture of the actual property. So
yeah,
like you can kind of create a jewel box within any New York apartment.
Yeah.
I love the idea of like slicing apartment buildings in half and like looking at what every floor looks like.
Yeah.
oh yeah, like a dollhouse effect, and just
Yeah.
see, like
But like in Seattle and moving out and doing like art design for homes, you have to really consider like the entirety of the home and the architecture. So
how do you do like, and it seems like you really go deep to do that. Like how do you do your research?
First I start like quickly with Google and Pinterest. And then I have a lot of older books that I like to go back to. And I would say like my mom is like a really great inspiration, and she loves to talk about history and architecture. So even like just a week ago, I have a stack of books under my computer, but she just sent me a whole book on Georgian houses. So I feel like books are really a great place to start, just because you're not focusing on trends. And obviously if you're doing research, that's where you can kind of find some good books to deep dive in. And I also try to like buy books or find any books that are old, like if I'm at antique stores and there's anything about like history of furniture decoration or different like Thomas Chippendale style furniture, like anything that's kind of like focusing on like some historic archives. I love to kind of like dig into that. So
I
Yeah,
love
like
this.
following you in your own home, like you dug up original photos and trying to like piece back together the history of the home and put it back together again. You just
Yeah.
find those in like city archives and
I found that, I think, I forget who told me about it, but I know Seattle, and I think a lot of cities, you can search by tax records. Seattle, you have to like specifically email this one woman that works in the department, and she's
In a
like,
basement under
yeah,
one light.
she knows
exactly.
every house.
I emailed this woman. I was like, I would love to know if you have any pictures of my house from whatever eras. And then she's like, I have no idea what we'll find. And then a week later, she said that she had a couple pictures from 1937. So
Cool.
they sell them to you for like $10 or whatever, or like 30
Well,
cents or something.
they're not
for
really
print.
making, yeah, it's not a big money maker for them, but
Yeah.
residents want it and tax dollars pay for it. So
Yeah. I mean, it's like interesting too because I think they did it when they were doing they were surveying for taxes. So it just depends on what year. But even in New York, like they have those records, and you can kind of go through the New York City kind of archives. And I've looked at every single apartment building that I lived in New York. Like I lived in a big loft in Bushwick, and that was like an old factory. And so like I found that building, and then there's one from like my Upper East Side, or two apartments on the Upper East Side that I got pictures of, and one of them was like early 30s, I would say, because of the cars. And then even our Brooklyn apartment, there's some pictures from like the 50s. So that kind of stuff I just love to do because I don't know, it makes me get excited about the building and to kind of think about like what it used to look like and before the 80s happened. Or like
Right. Like
most,
the original intention of the
so many bad
architect. And
remodels.
yeah. So I try to, at least with older homes, it's kind of like a good way to get a good direction to go in. So you can kind of say, okay, this is the original intent of the architecture. And then how can we use that as like our like borders or guidelines to how creative we can be within those guidelines.
Yeah.
And also I heard a quote one time, I think it was Nate Burgess said, you shouldn't be putting anything into your home in terms of like architectural or permanent details if it didn't actually exist at the time that it was built. So like finishes or different types of materials. So I think about that, like if my home is from 1916 and so I wanted to have stone countertops, like, I don't know, like composite countertops is not what I want to have that are like vacuum packed or something like that. But that's like a good way to kind of think about it. Okay, well, like cement existed and, you know, tiling existed and stone existed and that kind of stuff. It's like another good guide to kind of make sure that your home will always be timeless when you're doing the more permanent details.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a weird struggle because I think as designers we're surrounded by all these new, cool, innovative, even if it's just not new products, but they're of the moment, and you get excited about them. And sometimes you just have to know, like, I can appreciate this because it's beautiful. It's just not right for this home or this client or this project. But I feel like we get so much input at us at all times that there's almost like an overload.
Yeah, totally. I like to see, like, if I see something I love, I'm like, okay, I'm going to take that and then I put it away for someday that I get to use it in another project or something. Like, I have all these little favorite things, and I'm like, oh, this will look great in a home someday. Or if you see like a fabric and you're like, I will design an entire room around a piece of fabric that doesn't exist and the client doesn't
Totally.
exist. I'm sure
They
you
just
guys
don't
do the
know
same.
it yet.
Who wants
Yeah.
this dream project I've already designed? Super discounted design fee.
Yeah,
Like,
it's only going to take me 20 minutes to pull it all together.
I've already done this whole plan for you.
I mean, that's basically what like home remodel shows do. Like they have the design in the bag and they just like plug it in.
Totally.
And then they're like, look, we put this one picture of your family in here. This was totally just personalized for you.
No
and
personality.
Like, no, I roll
He knew
extreme.
exactly my aesthetic. So I mean, and I will say, like, to contradict that, what I said before, like if you go to Paris, all of the kitchens are brand new and they look amazing in these like
Yes.
houseman apartments. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like in the States, like we can't really get away with that too much. Maybe in like a New York
Well,
apartment or something, but
I think it's like the foundational pieces have to be so good. Like if you have like original white oak herringbone floors in your Paris apartment, like and amazing molding details, like anything will
Keep
look good with
that.
it. Like,
yeah,
Yeah.
like you go
it's true.
super modern and it just is like, oh, it's just a juxtaposition. Like, I don't know.
But like the builder basic stuff that like for where I am, a lot of stuff popped up after World War II, and the
Mhm.
architecture is not
The Gulf
interesting. The
War?
styles are
You mean
like no, well maybe okay, in Orange County where you grew up, yes, there was a
like
lot of
oak,
like 70s
orange
tract
oak
development and
cabinets? Yeah.
but like for around me, a lot of these areas filled in with these like post-war
Yeah.
little like cracker box, like exactly square boxes, and every third house was the same exact
It's
We
like the
have
house
we have
my
one.
that in Seattle.
6-year-old draws.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's a box house that yeah, your kids can
the little
draw. It's
triangle
very
on
Yeah.
top.
simple. Two windows on the front, door in the middle. And there's
Yeah.
nothing special about a lot of those. So it's this like urge that people want something special in their homes.
Mhm.
But also then you see it go too
You
overboard
can't over
where
design
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
like you
Yeah.
can't turn it into this mid-century modern structure when on the outside it's still, you know, a
It's a
ranch.
post-war little ranch. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's true. I mean, I think about we have a lot of those in Seattle too. Even on our street, like the street that we live on, there's a lot of craftsman homes and tutors. And then when you turn the corner, they like added this street. I think it was like a dead end, and then they
So it just went
turned the
through.
corner. Yeah, they went through and they added this street in like I would say like 45 or 46 and everything. And like every single house, there's 3 different styles. They're all kind of like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And I would say they're probably about like 1,000 or 1,200 square feet originally. And then people have
Yeah.
added on to some of them. But I've always kind of looked at those and been like, I would never want one of those houses, but I would love to like take one and completely redesign it for a client and to like really understand like how would you bring this home up but still appreciate the original architecture, which it wasn't about aesthetics, it was more about functionality.
Totally.
um
Efficiency,
yeah
like being a good, sturdy, new place. Like that's what was the selling point.
yeah so and I have like we have a neighbor that we're friends with, and he did a really good job on his house, and he kind of added some mid-century details and like a little more interest, and he painted his house like almost black, which I think is a trend that I'm not really into, but it looks really good. But he added like a
Controversial
metal
content
roof.
alert.
I know, controversial content. I love a black house, but I'm also like, they're like the new millennial gray, kind of like everybody painted their houses that weird dove gray kind of
I
color.
know.
And then,
I just did that with a client and they were like, "What do you think if it was like really modern?" And I was like, I was kind of thinking, what if it was a little bit more nodding traditional? Like, and it was like they ended up going that direction when I was like, I just feel like in 7 years you're gonna go, oh look, we painted our house 7 years ago, and everybody can tell the year we did it or
yeah,
the span of time we did it in because of that. And that just seems to me like such a big investment for something to pass so quickly.
totally. I agree. And I think the out exterior black house movement is definitely a 2019, 2018 thing that we're going to look back on in a couple of years and say like, oh, somebody had a great idea that they thought that they were being like a rebel by painting their house black.
Yeah.
It's gonna feel very dated. But I don't know. I mean, I think there's some where they just like they look awesome. And I love it when people do like almost black and then their trim is black, or like, there's like some type of like depth in the color that they're doing,
Yeah.
versus just like my black house. So
Yeah. Or like green, gray, olivey backgrounds.
yeah. I had a client that wanted an almost black house and a couple years ago, and we found like a really good dark blue black gray, and I love it. I mean, I think it was good because it was I was like, why don't we just like do this? You know, it's like easing him in a different direction, and I think it worked out. So.
Hey, Shaun, have you signed up for the Hot Young Designers Club newsletter?
Oh, no.
Really? Is this you not wanting to clutter your inbox with a lot of excess junk?
No. Let me do it. Where do I need to go?
You need to go to hotyoungdesignersclub.com, scroll down until you get to the subscribe button. You just pop in your email address and your name.
All right, I'm doing it right now. Is this going to be a bunch of spam?
It's not. It's actually not going to be anything until we actually get around to sending something. But we have big plans and we want to be able to send surveys to get feedback from our audience. And maybe once in a while, a special surprise or a recap.
All right, I'm on it.
Thank you. Back to the show. Many of our listeners we think are like in their first to third years of business, which we kind of are in that same place. How would you say that you've grown your business in the past few years?
So I would say, like in the first years, like I was saying, that I had a lot of clients at a time, and I was doing a lot of small projects. And really, my goal was to kind of narrow down and try to have longer lasting projects and less clients.
Mm-hmm.
And I've definitely been able to do that. And I would like for growing my business, I'm still mostly myself. I have an assistant that works with me a couple days a week. I would love to grow and have at least like 2 people full time. I don't want a big design firm, but my goal is to have like 4 or 5 people total in the company. And I would say, is this kind of like advice for people that are starting their business type of a thing, or
just
or in
kind
the
of
early
like
years?
like how to up level?
up level? Gosh, I mean, I'm always trying to reach out and seek people to help for like mentorship, I think is a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
I've always fallen into this, and I don't know if this is my fault, but I'm in this place where I feel like there's people who are newer than me in their business, and then there's people that are a lot further along than me in their business. And I've struggled with finding somebody that's kind of like the next level above me. So I did a lot of like my bit of growth kind of on my own, and really trying to think about like branding and understanding, like really going back to like, what do I want to do as like in my business? How do I want that to run? What do I want my client to look like? What type of clients do I want to have? What type of projects do I want to do? And I try to like always refocus on that. Even every time I get like a new client inquiry, I'm thinking like, okay, does this client fit into the brand that I'm trying to move into in the next 5 years or so? And sometimes like I gave myself, I think in 2018, I decided that I was going to do a Marie Kondo of clients and kind of say, okay, the clients that don't bring me joy, thank you so much and goodbye, and then keep the ones that do. And it was a little bit stressful because I knew that I was going to have to take a dip in income for a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
But like if you allow yourself to be open to new opportunities, they will come. And that might sound like totally privileged or something, but I had to kind of just keep telling myself that. And it definitely worked out for me in 2019, and it's still working for me now. So
I mean, saying no, do you find that you need to say no a lot? And how hard is that for you?
I do, and it's hard.
Rebecca's asking for a friend.
Asking for an anonymous friend.
It's so hard to say no to some projects, or like I have to talk myself out of it by asking them enough questions, and then I'm like, no, they're not right. But I think about, because you guys do a lot of those consultations, and I've been thinking about taking that on. But I also know from working in corporate and like luxury, like how do I want my brand to be really super elevated and luxury, but how do I do that and then to like reach the what's the word? you know how you have like there's the customers that are the ones that like can't necessarily buy the handbag from Chanel, but they can buy the lipstick and the makeup.
Right.
They're the aspirational client.
Right.
So like,
Yeah.
how can you as a designer, even if you're just a small design firm, like be approachable and have those aspirational clients, but not affect like your ultimately your brand's image? And
Right.
I think that's something that I struggle with, because I definitely want to do super high-end projects and luxury that have really high budgets. And because I loved, like, that's what I really enjoyed doing when I was working in luxury. So I try to only focus on like large scale renovations and not take on small projects. But then since COVID has happened, I've actually thought about like, how can I do these consultations? Because technically, like, you're meeting with people and then they become clients for you. It's like a form of marketing.
Right.
And I think also since the pandemic, it's really changed like what people think of luxury. Because I think like even those like large design firms that have been around forever, I heard we're starting to do consultations and like virtual design.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen
So
that. Shaun and I have this debate a lot. It's
We
comes
get
down to,
we get
like,
going
heated.
sometimes.
Well, it comes down to personal preference, I think, mostly.
Yeah.
If you can put boundaries in place. So like I have a big community of women that I just know from moms groups and past work, and you know, I know a lot of people in Sacramento, so my name gets passed around a lot. And no, not everyone can do a full project.
Mm-hmm.
I can't do everyone's projects. So
mm-hmm.
I still enjoy, I don't know, and I also enjoy the like, I don't know, improv of it all. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's designing on the fly. Like 2 hours goes quick, and you're throwing out your best creative process ideas.
Money's no
and some
object.
are,
Yeah.
some ideas are bad, and you just are like, I'm just warning you.
You're just so confident. You're like, this is great.
Well, but it's just like there's no like, I guess, risk really in it. So
less risk, no limitation. Like they know you're not gonna redesign their whole kitchen in a 2-hour meeting. Like, it's just not
But
possible.
I have done 2-hour meetings where people are like, okay, we can go DIY our kitchen at IKEA or whatever, and know kind of basic finishes that they can look at.
Yeah.
I think my opinion on what you're saying is you just have to put really strict limits and boundaries on what that means and make it really clear to the client. Like if it is just popping on a Zoom for an hour, that still feels like it could be a luxury experience for them.
Right.
To have that time with you.
It's something that I personally struggle with, but I feel like if you're like, once you can, the first few years in your business, it's all about like figuring out how to have the business, like figuring out how to work with clients, client experience, like pricing properly within your market, and within your ability and confidence level a lot of the times.
Mm-hmm.
And then like markup, and like also just figuring out how to like make money on furniture. And then there's this point that I came to that I feel like a lot of people come to. It's like, okay, now I'm figuring out how to do this as a job. Now, which direction do I go? Do I want to be like the most creative designer and like try to work with the clients that have the budget to make me the most creative in certain ways? Or do I want to be do I want to do well, and do I want to have a business that's really successful? And so what does that mean? Like, is that something that is working with more clients that are like more approachable design? Is it like, for example, Studio McGee? I mean, we've talked about this a little bit. Like, they have been in business for 5 years. I started my business in 2015 as well. And, you know, they have 99 employees and I have like 0.5 employees.
Yeah.
Right.
So like,
and then they have all this empire built around the masses.
But
getting
their
design
goal
to the
was
masses.
about growth and scalability. Yeah, like you're right.
Yeah.
Like it is like it's not, you can't have both, I don't think.
Right. I think you
Unless
can
you're
have
Kelly Wearstler.
well,
or you
but
just
also,
have to separate them. Like they have to be able to operate independently then, so you can still be
like
the creative mind
exactly.
Black label
and then have all of that running It's like
But there's
when you
also
label a wine.
It's like CK or Calvin
Yeah.
Klein. Like,
Yeah, totally. Yeah, let's talk about fashion. But even like Kelly Wearstler, like she obviously, like she had a business partner who was her husband, and she started out with
Mhm.
the hotels. So like that got her name out there really quickly, right? And then
Yeah.
she's grown and shrunk a couple of times. I had a friend who
Mhm.
was her store director in Melrose, I think. Is it Melrose, that store? What is that on? In West Hollywood. But you know, like,
Yes.
and Kelly she had a line at Bergdorf's, and so she would come to the store a lot, and I've met with her, and she's like, she had a whole clothing line that grew and then she pulled back, and then she was doing
Yeah.
accessories, and then she's pulled out of Bergdorf's, and it's like you've seen the growth and the way that
trial
she's
and
kind of,
error.
yeah, and she's like done her business differently, but she's always kind of, she developed like a strong sense of style, and that has been like that has been strong throughout, no matter how big our business is or how small our business is. She has a really strong like aesthetic, and obviously her clients are always going to be a certain type of client.
Right.
So I think for anybody that's really starting out, like you kind of get to a point where you really have to figure what that is, and there's no right or wrong answer for anybody, you know, like it's just what you're most comfortable with and what you enjoy doing. And sometimes I think I should be more business minded and being more formulaic in my design, and then I go back and I think like, no, like for the first 10 years of my career I was pushed to be more creative and to come up with different designs every single time I did a new project. So that's kind of my comfort zone. So I like to make every single client's very different, and to really think about how I can kind of stretch my creativity each time. So I ultimately am probably going to go down the road of never being a super big successful design firm, but I'd love to just be like a well-respected designer and to get projects that I enjoy and
Well,
work
yeah,
with
and to
clients that I
love
enjoy.
your
Always have
work.
people in line. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know
I mean,
if that answered your question.
No, it helps. Like that was like a great conversation we had on DMs, and I struggle with this too, but like ultimately knowing my personality, I've learned a lot about my personality being in business by myself for the last 3 years. I was in a partnership before. So now I know, like, okay, these are really your individual strengths and not so much strengths. And I get bored. I can't like do anything that's going to be formulaic, or I will get bored and over it. So,
So
kind of
yeah,
sucks.
I mean, I know. I'm like, I think about like people are, I'm like, oh my God, why am I not doing, I don't know. And even like, there's certain designers where you see everything that they're selling is like, even just on their websites, it's like from Noir, it's from Cisco Brothers, it's from these, I know where all of this furniture is coming from, and there's probably
Right.
an easy way that could be like, well, I could start an online website and have, you know, drop ship or something like that. But I don't know, like I still feel like I'm building my style and my aesthetic before I really want to start being like, these are the 3 types of sofas we typically use, or these are
Yeah. Like this is the Studio Laloc whatever
right
aesthetic, or this is the line that we offer, and it's not so limited to that yet.
I mean,
and maybe
I
it
would
won't
say,
ever be.
right, it may not ever be. I would say who does it really well, that it's kind of like inspires me, is Nikki Kehoe. Like they have like amazing, beautiful pieces that I would put in any one of my projects, and obviously those are custom designed at one point.
Yeah.
And they will resell them and they reuse them in their own projects, but every single thing they do is a little bit different. So
yes, they are one of my favorite showrooms to visit here.
Yes.
I mean, Rebecca, I think you and I have talked about this. That like you're gonna come, we're gonna schedule an appointment, we're gonna go in there. It's just, I will link it in the show notes for anybody who doesn't follow them or hasn't seen some of their stuff. But there's just something so weird and like different, and it like makes
it's more
you
like
think
art,
or
like they're
feel
like
something
sculptural, and
yeah, I think, well, I love that it's like so LA, but it is so not what you would expect from LA.
Absolutely.
Is what I feel like their style is. And I don't know. I just like it feels a little European. It's kind of just that like they're like a little and what's the word that I'm looking for? I don't know. But they don't take things too seriously, and I think that's a big deal too as far as like being able to make like it's our lives, it's our homes, and I don't think we need to be super serious about everything that we do. And sometimes you like look at rooms that are done by designers and you're like, okay, that's a designer's room, and like they did not just like relax a little bit. Like it's so contrived where I feel like their work is not contrived.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense.
Rebecca calls that the studio plum magic, where you like leave
You call
room
it
for. Well, maybe I do. I call it that more now after you
I know what
described
you're
like leaving room for the magic in design of like leaving room for something to pop up that you're like, this is not what we planned. It's really unexpected, but it works, and it then makes the space feel.
I mean, it's a
Totally.
lot of mostly
amazing.
the styling. I leave that too, but like Shaun and I have gotten into like conversations, like one room challenge, especially because he
I'm
wants it done like a month ago, and he's like working ahead, and I'm like, no, I like to like, I don't know, be flying a little bit by the seat of my pants, like, and not know, and like be on my toes to like. And then have something magical find me, like
you get that motivation
with like special pieces
of finding something cool, and you're like, oh, I don't know that if I had 3 months to pick that, I would have picked that. But now that I'm in this vintage store and I found it,
stuff that like finds you, you know, like
definitely. I'm kind of in that realm, I would say.
Yeah.
By the way,
I think
it's
the treasure
paint color for your room. Yeah, I'm like dying.
I think it's gonna be one of these.
Ooh, wow, that's unexpected. I like that. So yeah,
Shaun and I went on a journey yesterday about it.
We did she was like, okay, FaceTiming, and then sometimes you just.
Well,
I think
it's just
inspiration doesn't always
that's
hit.
part of it. Yeah, like that. I have to feel. I don't do this with clients because I'm not as emotionally invested, but I have to feel a little like tingle at some point in a project.
Yeah.
So, and that's why I love treasure hunting. That's why I love vintage too. I don't know. I just feel like things just kind of like find you. I don't know.
Yeah, I definitely am kind of that way where when I'm doing a lot of it happens in the styling. So I'll have like an idea of how something should look, but we don't actually source the pillow fabrics until we have the room together, or we don't really decide on like what do the lamps look like or what did some of these accessories look like. But even just like with certain case pieces and antique stuff, like you can just be like, I know I want something that feels like this in this room. And then if you go to antique stores, it might come up there, or if you're just looking online. I'm working on a bathroom project that we designed this like upstairs renovation for the primary bath and the bedroom. And then it got put on hold for like so many reasons. Like there was health issues with the client, and then there was a divorce, and there was just like so much that happened that it's been 2 years since we got it approved.
Oh my God, it's a totally different project now.
Yeah, and so then I've gone back through and I'm looking at some of the selections, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to get more creative on how I'm going to do this floor. Or obviously like the antique display cabinet that I wanted to use for like bath towels and whatever is sold. So we're trying to find new stuff. And it's almost like making the design better, and then it kind of just feels like a little bit more, it feels like more fun to me because we have a plan that's already there, but then we can kind of like push it a little bit more. And even the bedroom, like we were obsessed with this chair that we selected, and now I'm like, do we want to do a custom chair? Like I'm just getting more excited about changing that chair a little bit, you know?
I mean, you already got them pushed up to that limit. And so now it's like, oh, you got comfortable at that zone. So now let's just go a little further past that. Like,
and I mean, the client's totally on board for it. She's amazing. Like she's one of those clients that's like hands off, but loves everything you show them, and
that's awesome.
Has a good budget. So someday that project will happen. It's supposed to be breaking ground on November 10th, so we'll see. But
I feel like there is a really long inroad on a lot of projects that I don't think like I guess the mainstream of interior design that you see on Pinterest and TV and Instagram or wherever, that doesn't really get talked about so much. Of just,
Yes.
I mean, you're years before the project, even the first hammer swings or the first shovel digs in, and then there's so much more that adapts and grows as the project comes together. And there is a lot of on the fly changes or decisions that happen, and that's not talked about a lot.
Yeah.
um I
I mean,
mean,
I would love to talk about timelines with you guys, because I feel like that's something as a new designer, like going from working in a company where like everything I did was a portfolio piece to starting my business and realizing like 5% of the work that I do is a portfolio
yeah,
piece.
yeah,
And the struggles, like the real struggle of the arcs of projects and having to be patient. I mean, I have some clients that are home polish clients, and I've been working with them for 5 years now, like 4 years.
oh my gosh,
And I'm like, can this project just get to a point where we can photograph it? Because, and those are the ones that I've stuck through with, because I knew that like they were worth it and the photos were going to come out of it. But I think that's a big struggle when you're building your business and you're building your aesthetic and your brand, is actually getting photographs.
yeah,
Um, and I mean, for me, like I just finished a project in New York, and we were working with this client for over 4 years. We did her apartment in New York City, and then we did her home upstate. And it was incredible. I worked with a partner who's an architect back in New York on it. And then COVID happened, and we had everything scheduled for May for the photo shoot. And it was like I had a photographer flying in from Seattle. I had to fly out the week before. I was going to do all the photo shoot prep all myself. And it's a 12,000 square foot house, like everything.
Oh my God.
So I had budgeted like all this money for this photo shoot, and then COVID happened and we canceled it, obviously. But I don't know when I'm going to go back and do that. I don't know when the stars are going to align again. I don't know if the
yeah,
clients are still going to be interested in doing it. So
Right.
yeah.
like,
It's a big ask to be like, you can't really be here for a week or mess
yeah,
with stuff while
Like, is
I
it all
do all of
installed,
this.
like
And
styled?
the house is mostly styled, but there was a lot that I had to come and do myself. And
Yeah.
like clients don't always like live the way that you plan for rooms to look.
girl,
So
preach,
so
preach.
there's a lot that has to either happen with like bringing things in or taking things out.
Shaun takes
And
all their art down.
yeah, I
I
mean, I've done that
Yeah.
too.
I can't jive with bad art taste, and not granted,
I
I'm not
mean, you
like some
can't photograph like
aficionado.
something really terrible that doesn't look
Right.
Yeah.
good
Or
with your
we've
design.
talked about like the families who like to show all their family
Like
pictures,
a
and I'm
canvas
not.
portrait of their
Oh,
close-up
Yeah.
of
Like
their.
the 2x3 wedding portrait that was printed on canvas. But
no,
no,
no. I
like
mean,
I
that's the
just,
other thing too. Sometimes like there's designers that are like, no, we select the art.
yeah.
And I'm starting
I
to
mean, I'd
wish that
love to
I
be
was
a prima
that
donna like
designer.
that, but
Yeah. But there's some cases where I'm like, no, art is personal. Like you can put what you want up on your walls, but you also have to be not offended when I take it down for the photo shoot.
Yeah, I guess that would be a good conversation to have, and like a relationship with somebody you could borrow art from,
Right.
so that you like design with
Totally.
it in mind and let the client know, like, I understand you don't want to buy this $10,000 piece of art right now, but we're going to put it in the photos. So.
Yeah. And I think it's definitely like there's that aspect, the amount of cost that photo shoots are. Then again, photos are really our only marketing. So like if you're gonna drop $5,000, $10,000 on a photo shoot, and you do like one a year, and that's your entire marketing budget, technically, it's not bad. Or if you do
Yeah,
two a
especially if it's a
year.
project that really speaks to what you are capable of and want to keep doing more of.
Yes,
Want a
yes.
12,000 square foot house? That's a lot of content.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
it's
you can
like
trickle out those photos,
Shit.
really string that out so
Have you
people
got
get
like
the
5
full.
bathrooms? Yeah.
Well, yeah, because
yeah,
a
10
one
baths.
portfolio, yeah, a
10?
portfolio folder on a
Yes.
website is not going to be that many photos. Like
Right.
12 to
And even just
20,
like,
but yet all those extra pictures to share with people.
yeah, I mean, it's worth it for your Instagram. I mean,
Yeah.
it is though. I've also, and I don't know how you guys think about this, or not guys. I hate saying that, but I'm getting better.
We
Y'all
go,
think about
you
this.
guys, y'all,
Guys.
whatever. Yeah.
I'm trying to work with one photographer because I really
Mhm.
want to, because that photographer's aesthetic really dictates like how your website looks. And so I feel like that's
in your
important
brand,
too,
yeah.
in your brand. And then I really only want to spend the money on the projects that I want to hopefully get press on. And then hopefully those will bring the more clients of what I'm looking for. So I feel like I've held out on getting a lot of work photographed in the last 5 years, just because things obviously don't come to fruition for various reasons, or it just takes, it has to be right. And I have to feel like it's worth the money to spend.
Well, yeah, it's totally an investment. I've been like going back and forth between taking my own photos, so I'm trying it this round for One Room Challenge, just so I can do
Very
more
daring.
photography. I know it's
I
just
take
my
my
house,
home. I take pictures of my home, but I'm
yeah,
hoping
but
to
big
have my home
projects.
photographed. Yeah. Like I'm hoping to, once I finish my entire home, having it professionally photographed.
Yeah.
And I don't know about, because I think you guys get a lot of press from different places, and I heard you talking about this last time. And I mean, you were just in, was it Sacramento newspaper or magazine?
Magazine,
Rebecca? Yeah, I mean, that's exciting. And there's certain types of magazines that will only take, like Lux, for example, they will only take entire homes that tell a full story.
Oh,
Right.
Like I think obviously like Elle Decor and some of those other magazines are the same way. Like Architectural Digest, unless you're working with a celebrity, you're not getting picked. And there's just like
you might get a
certain,
little picture for like one question or something, but
right, or they'll put you in clever. But I think that there's, and that's another thing that I think about too. I'm like, okay, so I don't want to photograph my house until it's totally done, because I want to have it go out to one of those magazines that's going to
like
do
meet
a
their
big story.
standards. Yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah.
I think a lot of what I've learned about having my business is being patient.
Oh,
Well,
totally.
yeah. I know. I know I have a couple projects that I'm like considering going back to photo shoot, but it's also like so hard to go back. Like
Oh, yes.
I feel like I'm gonna have to redo a bunch of stuff, and I'm trying to like decide if it's worth it. I don't know.
It's tough. I
Yeah,
mean,
you have
the
to
other,
just say if it's going to get you the push that you need. Like, oh, are these photos going to help get the
Attract
next
more.
person? Are they going to help show people more of what I can do? And sometimes you're like, this is a great project. It's just like no one's ever going to see it except the client, and that's okay.
yeah. Or sometimes, so I started working with a woman who does press recently, and I thought it was interesting because I think a lot of people still do their own press, and I think that's great. I'm apparently, that's my weakness, is reaching out and asking for stuff. Hence why I don't really have many sponsorships on anything. But I started working with a woman, and basically you send her images and she'll tell you like what she thinks it can get, where she thinks it will go, and if it's
Oh.
worth it. And then she'll reach out to these magazines and different like press agencies or whoever, and then if they get picked up, then she charges you. So, and
Like a
she'll charge you for it.
headhunter?
It's like fee
She's
for
kind of
service
like,
type of model.
yeah, she's amazing. Her name's Sarah, and I'll send you guys, I don't know what her last name is, but she basically is just like, you reach out to her, hey, I have these photos and I really want to try to get this published. Where can I do? And then she's like, well, she had a conversation with me about one project, for example, that I shot last year that was, the story is really interesting because we basically took this home down from, it was a 1,900 square foot single level ranch home, and it was like 90s build, and so it had some kind of like craftsman details, but it didn't really know what was going on. And we took everything down but one wall and rebuilt this house and put a second floor on it, so now it's 3,300 square feet. Everything was like as custom as we could get, but it was within a really tight budget overall. And I think the home looks great. It's not entirely my aesthetic in terms of like, it doesn't have a ton of patterns and a lot of color, but it's a beautiful home. The kitchen's nice and everything. And I showed it to her and she was like, okay, so it's not a really low budget home. So we're not going to be able to get it into magazines where we're really talking about low budget, because they did hire a designer and they did hire contractors and they did spend a certain amount of money to do custom work,
Mm-hmm.
but it's also not really high end. So she said it was like right in the middle of that like zone where it probably wasn't going to get picked up. And
Right.
she did push it to like Martha Stewart and a couple other magazines, and it didn't end up getting picked up. So I thought that was really great for like a learning experience for me in terms of like what I want to photograph too, because I figure, okay, so I spent close to $5,000 on that shoot, and I'm using it for my website and for Instagram and for other like materials that I have for my business stuff. But it really, I don't know, going forward, if I have a project that I feel like is within those parameters again, I'm probably not going to spend the $5,000 on the professional photographers.
Like,
Or I'll
Right.
grab a couple photos of your favorite like vignettes or whatever and call it a day.
Bounce out of there without keep
It's
that
smart
keep
to
that
have.
$5,000 in your pocket instead. Like
yeah.
save
Oh,
that
and
for other
have the like
strategies and
end result of the publication in mind, basically,
Yeah.
before you shoot it.
And so I guess that's kind of like what it helps me also to narrow back into like, what is my brand? Where do I want to go? And if I can't get it out there in the universe, then how is it serving me? So, and if I do get it out there in the universe and it's not my real strong style, then also how is that serving me? So.
Right.
Yeah, we don't have to shoot everything. Not everything's going to get press or attention.
Right.
And then there's a fine balance between over investing in that process and knowing when it's okay to say like, I need content, but this isn't the content I need.
Exactly.
Well, and whatever you put out is what you're asking for more of. So is that what you want more of? Like, really?
Right.
Yeah.
I'm happy to collect the paid invoices from the client projects that never see the light of day.
Well, yeah, because that is
my goal is to get paid. I mean,
yeah.
like I obviously want to work as a creative, but the
Yeah.
whole point of this is to get paid to do that. So I don't want to make it seem like, oh, the most important thing is portfolio building and pictures. Like that's not the most important thing for me at all times. I also want to be able to support my lifestyle and contribute to my household. Like
exactly. I mean, well, there's like what's that graph? What is it? A Venn diagram where there's the three circles that go together?
That's my favorite thing.
Yeah. So there's like that graph where when I was starting out, somebody would say, okay, you take projects based on like one of them is portfolio or press. Another one is creativity and joy. And the other one is money. And if the project doesn't fulfill two of those, then don't take it. So, and if it does fulfill only one, then like how much of that one does it help you? Like if it's super creative and you're going to love working on this project, but you're not going to make any money and you know you're not going to get any press from it or any, like it's not going to get anything in terms of, let's say, content. Do you have other projects that are making you money and doing and serving you in the ways that you need? Or let's say if it's just like really, really good money, are you gonna hate it or are you gonna still get some joy from it? So I try to kind of also think of that when I accept projects and when I say no, because if I get a client in and I'm like, oh, this would be really fun to work on, but their budget's not really great, which is gonna make it really, really difficult, or like their timeline is crazy or something where it doesn't fit any of those boxes, and I try to just say like, you know what, this isn't right, but I'll try to find somebody who I think is right for you, or is there another way that I can help you in a different
that's a smart way of looking at it.
So
I like that picking priorities.
And I think
mindset.
too, like quarterly or whatever, you can kind of analyze where you're lacking. Like if you've been only picking in these two categories and you're really light on portfolio, then you need to like try to find that one that's more portfolio worthy. Okay.
So the burning questions.
Yeah.
So these are quick fire style, just getting your brain a little bit more. Number one, in one sentence, how has your business changed as a result of COVID-19?
I would say the biggest change I've seen in my business is I've actually grown my Instagram account since COVID. I had a goal to get more followers this year, to get to 10,000, and my scullery, which helped, got me on Domino, and then that put me past 10 grand. And then now I've been just kind of that snowball rolling down the hill, But I think that being home more and having that little bit more time during COVID and being able to focus back on really thinking about like my Instagram account and trying to get more engagement and to engage more with my followers has helped in that way. So, and in terms of the business aspect, I've been getting a lot of new inquiries because of it. I can't say that they're all turning over, but definitely I think the ultimate goal is to have more inquiries will turn into more turnover in clients.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So what have you done for professional development recently that you would recommend to our listeners? Books, podcasts?
So I listen to a lot of podcasts. Yours is one. And then I listen to this one called Well-Designed Business. Have you listened to that one?
Mm-hmm.
And I think her name's Leanne. Yeah, Luann.
Luann Nigara.
Yeah, Luann Nigara. So her podcast is really helpful. She has so many episodes, so I try to go through and pick my favorites. And then I listen to the Business of Home podcast kind of frequently. And I think that Cherish started a podcast recently, which is about kind of the interior design universe.
Yeah.
I listened to the ADS Deet, which is not so much business, but it's a lot about historical knowledge for interior design, which I love. And I've recently finally hired a bookkeeper.
Yay.
And yeah, I've been doing all of that myself for the last 5 years. And I would say we were talking a little bit about branding, and I have a really good book that I can recommend.
Oh, yeah.
It's called Branding of Interior Design. Let me grab it really quickly.
See if it's the one that I have.
Is it a yellow cover?
It's sorry guys. It's by Kim Kutabal, Visibility and Business Strategy for Interior Designers. It's a really good book. Yes, this is a great book. And I go back to it kind of frequently when I'm trying to decide what clients to take or what I should be doing next with my business and my brand and everything. So
cool. We'll link that so the listeners can find it.
Cool.
I actually have that book and I've never read it, so thanks for the reminder.
Yeah. It was great because you just did a rebrand.
Yeah.
Studio Plum, and I used it a lot for my rebrand when I changed my business name. So.
Okay. Curious, what does Laloc mean?
So Laloc, so I did a rebrand because my initial business was called Union Adorn. And so it was the concept of like, we were working with a union of designers and it was about creating beauty. And a lot of it was more for working in retail and commercial projects because you hire so many different vendors and fabricators and companies to kind of create this, to have projects come through and all of that. And so I wanted to focus more back on myself and have it be more of like a personal brand, but not named after me, which I think is important if you want to grow in the future. So Laloc is LA for Lauren, LO for Lothrop is my middle name, and C is Caron. So it's technically my initials. It felt French, and I like that it was like a strong singular word. And I feel like if I ever have a store or a shop, it could be Shop Laloc, or I could kind of do different forms of the word, but it will always have Laloc as the major word.
Yeah, I kind of felt like it was like your name, but I couldn't figure it out. So that's awesome. Yeah. Kind of like Goop.
Yeah, well, also, I was like, Goop, she was like, what was that thing about how like all these, the successful businesses that were internet businesses had the two O's in it.
Yeah.
So she did that, and I was like, well, it's kind of similar, but I don't want to be totally like Gwyneth Paltrow.
You could have been Laloc.
Laloc. Okay, our third burning question. What's one design element that you've been drawn to lately? Like materials, objects, anything?
I feel like it's such a trend right now, but I've been definitely drawn to scallops. I would love to do like some type of upholstery with some fun little scallop bases. and on the skirt. And I also really have been drawn to yellow. And it's funny because I've hated yellow for so many years in interiors. I really want to use it in a kitchen. Like I want to do a yellow kitchen, or I want to do a yellow scullery or a yellow laundry room or something. And like really strong yellow.
Mm.
But I also do love like buttercream, which is kind of yellow. But I want like an intense yellow something to design.
Ooh,
Yeah, I feel like the
interesting.
colors, like it's just like the cycle around the color wheel. Like, I don't know. I feel like I'm just always curious about my own like leanings towards colors and accepting or not. Like I'm starting to like accept purple a little bit, which I've
Me
never
too.
loved.
I've always hated purple, but totally.
How does that happen? Like I'm
Eggplant
even wearing
color
lilac.
and
Like
Yeah. I feel like if it has to have a lot of red in it
yeah,
for me
yellow
to
and
enjoy
red.
it as a purple, because like the blue purple is like purple. No way. I couldn't do
Right.
that. But
I know, it's funny. Or psychology of color.
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so if you could live in the set of any TV show or movie, what would it be?
I always go back to this. So in The Handmaid's Tale, the kitchen that they have
Oh yeah.
with like it has
The
the
greenhouse.
the greenhouse connected. Like that is like my favorite space of
yeah.
any show. I want that
Mhm.
kitchen.
Like that could be a showroom. Like that could
It could be.
I mean, I could see that being in New York. Like that's the way the store looks, and there's kitchen goods
Yep.
like being sold
Kind of,
in a place like that.
I mean, there is a little bit of that going on in New York in the Plain English showroom. It's in a townhouse. They have they have a yellow scullery in the back. And it's like it has a little bit of a window to the back of the garden back there. So
I wanna see it.
totally. And also, I think this might be a total lie, but I feel like Goop, saying it again, in London in their what's that Notting Hill store, I think they had a similar thing, kind of like the greenhouse going on in the back of the store.
I love that.
Yeah, I love it. I would love to have like a conservatory attached to my kitchen.
Well, and it would just be like such pretty light in Seattle, like even when it's rainy, like it would just kind of like glow in there.
But yeah, that show's great. I feel like the Queen's Gambit, I actually really love the house that she lived in, even though none of it was my style.
I did too, the wallpaper.
Yeah, and it's just
I loved watching how they shifted the set when she took it over. Have you gotten that far, Shaun? Or did you finish?
Yes. Yeah, I finished it.
Like how she just switched the wallpaper out and made it.
Anyway. It was good. I felt like it was really, the details were really good in that show. And
the set was like, I mean, were you following like all the checkered patterns on all the fabric? Like the first 2 or 3 episodes, almost all the fabrics were either a check, a plaid with like strong graphics.
Very subliminal.
I didn't catch that. That's really good.
Check it. It's really great. Like I love that.
I usually catch that stuff.
Yeah, it's cool.
The set
like
team, had a really fun job doing that.
They were definitely telling a lot of the story. So yeah,
that's super cool. Yeah, I felt like that show was really good, and obviously like Ratchet is like they're in Tony Duquette's house in LA, and I think like the 3rd episode.
Yeah.
And I would love to go there someday. So more is more.
Good ones.
Good sets. Okay, last burning question. If you could save one non-living object from your home in a fire, what would it be?
One is hard. It used to always be this map that my mom gave me that's of Paris from like before the Eiffel Tower existed. Like the map isn't really worth anything, but the frame is worth a little bit. But I always love that piece. And so that was always like my one thing. But then she also gave me this nurse portrait. She was a French, I think, nurse from like World War I. And so I have that portrait, which I recently framed. And I feel like those 2 items, like I could never get back. So
yeah.
I like the stories with all of that.
I know you have such great art.
Thanks to my mom.
I know. Thanks to the pod, the cross country.
You gotta hold on to that stuff too. You gotta make sure that like someone's got to hoard it in every family to
I
make sure that
know.
it gets passed
I
along.
know. We're not having kids, so I have to give it to my niece or something. So
You just start infusing the love of all this stuff now, so they really want it.
yeah, it's
Be
true.
the next caretaker. Well, Lauren, can you tell our listeners where they can find you?
Yes. My Instagram account is Studio Laloc. That's Studio LALOC. My website is www.studiolaloc.com. And I'm also on Pinterest under the same name. And I think I'm on Facebook, but I try to stay away for political reasons. I only go on for the marketplace. So
Same.
I'm just here to creep cool stuff that's for sale. I don't want anything else.
Side note, have you heard of the there's a Chrome extension that is called the Facebook feed obliterator?
No, I haven't heard of that.
So you can put it on you can load it into your Chrome, and basically all I see is the top and the sides, and there's no feed.
Oh, that's perfect, because that's what I know, that you have groups on
triggered.
Facebook, and I'm afraid to go on Facebook.
Yeah, totally.
so
So you don't have to
triggering.
really fight or feel terrible about.
I just
you're just not
blocked
seeing any of
somebody
it.
this morning, so
Oh,
Yeah,
it's gonna be a busy blocking weekend for a lot of people.
Get your block
Deal.
fingers ready. Just get that
Yep.
obliterator, and then they're all gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, all I see is my groups, my marketplace. The notifications are still there.
Amazing. Okay,
Yeah.
that's like the best tip of the day right there.
That's what I'm here for.
Rebecca is up on early adoption technology. She always finds it first, and then she wants
someone told me
everybody to
about
know
it.
about it. So
Yeah.
If
I
it's
like
good,
that.
I'm gonna share.
Definitely.
Well, thank you
Cool.
so much, Lauren. It's so great to see you and talk to you.
Yes, thank you so much. It was so great to see you both too. I feel like we've been texting a lot on the gram, but
Yeah.
and I listen to you both from the podcast, and I'm always yelling at you, but you don't know that.
Well, feel free to send us messages.
Send us a voice message or something.
Feel free to
so we
correct
can
us.
hear it.
I'm
Yeah.
sure.
No,
Sure we need
it's
a fact check.
not a lot of that. It's just a lot of I want to join in.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
Thank you. We
Thank
really
you.
appreciated having you.
Yeah, I'm really honored that you invited me on the podcast. So thank you.
Of
so much.
course. All right. Talk soon.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Thanks for joining this meeting of the Hot Young Designers Club podcast.
If you liked what you heard, please subscribe and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Check out the show notes there for links to things we talked about today.
We are keeping the conversation going on Instagram, so don't forget to like, comment, and follow at Hot Young Designers Club.
You can find Rebecca on Instagram at Studio Plum.
And you can find Shaun at Renstead Interiors. That's WRENSTED. Do you like when your patients look at WebMD and
I should have, and that should be my next one, is we can't look at the WebMD of interior design.
This isn't WebID, we don't
have cancer.